is a platform that uses AI to conduct and then analyze consumer research interviews. So we make gathering insights faster, cheaper, and deeper. So in our experience, some traditional customer research methods can come with a trade-off, right? So surveys, fantastic at the what and the how many, but sometimes they don't quite give you that depth and that context and the nuance that you get with qual. And also, surveys aren't always the most brilliantly engaging user experience. Qual interviews, on the other hand, right, fantastic at giving you all of that detail and that context and that nuance. But also the challenge with those interviews can be sometimes that they're really time consuming and expensive, and the budgets don't match, and coordinating all everyone's diaries can be a challenge. So any method has its disadvantages and advantages, but we basically believe that actually technology can hopefully help us overcome some of those disadvantages. So who are our customers and what do they use it for? So typically our customers tend to fall into one of three categories. It's market research agencies like Kantar and Metrics Lab and many more besides, and then insights teams within larger corporations, and then also advertising agencies and media agencies who are using it for concept testing and the like, which is what I'll talk about next. Actually, what do they use it for? So typically it's around explorative research or that creative or concept testing, and then also product or CX research. They also tell us that they use it to say yes to research more often. They tell us that previously, sometimes their clients or their colleagues or would come to them asking them to deep dive on a particular topic, but that often the budget just simply didn't stretch far enough to do either any interviews or enough interviews. One of our clients also described it as quick dip qual, which we thought was just like a perfect description for it, right? So a really great option when you're looking for answers fast. A bit like having the voice of the customer on speed dial. It's also worth talking about actually like what it isn't, right? So when not to use it, right? So we don't believe that this is a perfect replacement for a brilliant quali, right? Someone who's going to sit there and read the subtle cues of someone's body language and see the whites of someone's eyes and adjust accordingly. It isn't that, right? It's a tool. It's not as good as you. It is very good, and hopefully together you can be brilliant. There was a LinkedIn post I saw the other day, and someone had said, "Oh, she'd just seen an AI webinar on Qual, and she'd just been to interview, like a person who'd been made homeless and had his benefits cut." She's going, "Well, like, are you telling me that an AI is going to be as good and empathetic and do as good a job at interviewing in that situation as me?" Like 100% not, absolutely not. So there are definitely good and bad times to use it. Also worth talking, I don't know how familiar you are with the world of sort of synthetic data, but this is not synthetic data. I just want to make that really clear. So actually, we believe that you get the best results by speaking to actual real humans. We are an AI startup, but actually, it's not the AI bit. Certainly that I get excited about, right? It's the people, those brilliantly eccentric individuals, their genuine feelings, their unique stories, their viewpoints, their deep passions. So not just numbers, but the stories behind the numbers too. So this might sound odd that it's an AI that can keep your research human, but we kind of feel actually check boxes and Likert scales maybe don't feel particularly human at all, and we find actually that the poor participant engagement is much smaller issue with our AI moderated interviews. Why? Well, because how it works is that the our AI follows up with unique uh, probing questions that are dynamic, that are responding to what the person has said. So actually, that fatigue and boredom that sometimes you get with clicking on surveys doesn't happen. And actually, in some cases, we feel actually that respondents are able to give perhaps more honest and certainly more spontaneous and vivid stories. We also found actually that the so we're a voice-led platform and really voice first. And we encourage the participants to give their answers verbally. And we send the answers as text messages, and I'll explain why in a second. But we really encourage the participants to speak their answers because, in our experience, actually, we get much longer answers when they're spoken rather than typed into an open box field. In our experience, usually somewhere between 2.5 and 3 times longer. So this is an example of something that we did with Vodafone here in the Netherlands, Vodafone Ziggo. And so they asked their participants as a comparison to type out what they thought about these monster mascots. And when they typed them out, they got answers like this at the top. So we're a Dutch-based organization. My Dutch, I'm afraid, is absolutely appalling, so I won't attempt to butcher the Dutch language. But the top line there, which was typed out, was, reminds me of Monsters, Inc., the movie. So, all in all, not a terrible answer. But, we don't know, is that a good thing? It's also quite short, but it's perhaps not surprising that it's a short answer, right? They're probably filling this in on a mobile device. And we always say kind of like, tiny keyboards lead to tiny responses. And then the answer below was given as a voice note. And again, I won't traumatize you with my attempt at speaking the Dutch language, but basically what it says is something along the lines of these animals. Oh, they remind me of the puppies we used to have. They look so cozy with their soft faces and cute appearance. So we're getting loads more detail out of this answer. And then obviously, if we're following this up with another AI question to probe even deeper about what they've said, you're going to get even further richness as well. One of the things that we've noticed as well, which has been really satisfying, is that the participants, really actually enjoy the experience and not just tolerate it, right? So we feel like because we're particularly when compared to filling in surveys, that actually we're removing quite a lot of the friction to getting those rich, detailed responses, and 70% of the respondents that we speak to say they much prefer delivering their answers in the form of a voice note rather than typing away. One thing we're really, really clear about at the start of every interview is that we make it super clear that the participant, the respondent, they know that they are talking to an AI. It would be quite easy to be confused into thinking that you were having a conversation with a person, but it's really important for us from an ethical perspective that they know they're talking to an AI. And one of the things that we've learned along the way is that what the participants really, really appreciate is that at the end of every interview, what our model does is in effect summarizes the entire conversation and says, "Here's what we've understood. You've said here's a general summary of your answers. Is this an accurate reflection of what you've told us? And have you got anything else you'd like to add or change?" And just seeing their responses summarized like that, understandably gives them a feeling that they are actually being listened to and heard, and we know that because they tell us. One of the other things that I suppose we've learned along the way is that actually AI interviews are maybe changing research in ways that we hadn't anticipated, or new formats could potentially emerge from it. So a good example would be the work that we did with our partners at Humanize. So Humanize, brilliant agency based up in Manchester with Paul and Lynn. They do lots of work with FMCG brands. They do lots of interviewing, but they also do lots of surveying. They work with the likes of P&G and Unilever and PepsiCo and lots of others. And they used Tellet for something that had never been done before. So we were super excited by this. So what they did was they created an AI interviewer, and they sent it. So they actually have their own panel, the family panel, and they sent it to about 200 of their people within their panel. And the interview started, and the AI interviewer asked them to go to their fridge and open up their fridge, and then it asked them to take a photograph of what was inside their fridge. And then our platform analyzed the contents of the photos and then interviewed them about the contents therein. So the results were really interesting, right? So we had all sorts of weird and wonderful things that people told us about were in their fridges, things like skin balm for dogs, lots and lots of medication, insulin being a top contender. And then one person who was saying, "Oh, I love keeping my sun cream in my fridge because I love to apply sun cream cold." And then kind of like the bigger headline being that we actually spotted this sort of bigger uptick in gut health boosting products that were in people's fridges, things like kefir and sauerkraut. So maybe a bit of that sort of Tim Spector, Zoe effect rippling through into people's fridges. And then what we were also then able to do, as well as sort of the AI interviewing them about the contents of their fridges, we were able to then also go, oh, and based on what we've seen in your fridge, here's a recipe that you can then go and cook tonight. I'm going to try and rattle through because I'm conscious of time and I do want to take some questions at the end. So one of the things, the aspects of Tellet that our clients get really excited about and has opened up all sorts of opportunities is its multilingual capabilities. We've just completed a multi-market study with Gravity Road, the agency in the UK, and it took place across Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and the UK. Obviously, that would have taken months and huge budgets before, but we had it wrapped up in start to finish in about 2 weeks. And basically how that works is and I'll show you this in one moment. You can set the language for your discussion guide, and you can write your discussion guide in, for example, English, but then you can tick a box and allow the participants to conduct the interview in whichever language they prefer. So actually really good for reaching, those harder to reach communities as well. And so, you no need for translators. And so really game-changing bit of technology. Okay, so I will quickly talk about how it works, and I'll give you a quick demo as well. So how does it work? Well, we basically break it down into 4 simple steps. So it's design, so designing your discussion guide, then you share it with whoever you want to share it with. It might be that you've got your own community or staff or customers that you want to share it with, or if you want to share it with a panel, then we integrate with various different panel providers as well. Then the interviews take place. Typically, it's kind of like anywhere between 5 and 20-minute long experience. We have done much longer. We have done much shorter, experimenting all the time with the perfect duration. But it seems like that sort of 15-minute experience is what most experiences are like. And then the analysis takes place as well, and I can talk you through how that works. But let me show you how this works. So this is the design of the discussion guide. So here you're able to give your interviewer a name. So in this case, we're going to call the interviewer Caroline. This is for a fictional electric car brand called the Veloce Sedaris. So we've got our company name there. And then we're going to give our interviewer a goal. What's the objective? What we're looking to understand? In this case, it's around the factors that people to understand the most important factors when people are considering the purchase of an electric vehicle. And then here's our audience. So who are we talking to? In this case, 25 to 55-year-old men and women from London earning over a certain amount. You can also then select your tone of voice. We're working on different options for that as well. At the moment, that's informal. And then the context. So the context is really, it's just like you're briefing a normal interviewer. You're providing the model, the AI model, with that useful information that will help the interview go as well as possible. So the example that I give here is what one of our clients has a chain of restaurants. And what we did here was we uploaded the menu so that when we interviewed the customers who'd been for a meal at the restaurant and they said to them, how was your meal? And they said, yeah, it was fantastic. I had the burger. And we know that actually there are 3 different types of burger on the menu. Our AI model goes, wonderful. Which burger was it? Was it the quarter pounder, the Royale, or whatever it might be? So the model's got that contextual information to grab onto. Also useful for things just like stylistically, you can basically influence the style of the interview and just provide really correct spellings and things like that. So that's the context. And then we're going to go into the script itself. So here's your opening message. So this is the message that every participant will see when they click on the interview to begin. So in this case, it's, hi, I'm Caroline, an AI researcher for the auto industry. Got 3 quick questions for you. Away we go. And then we've got that's our opening message, and then we're going to build out our discussion guide. So here we're starting off with actually with more of a quant-like question on a scale of 1 to 10. How likely are you to buy the car? And then we're going to set the number of follow-up questions. How many follow-up questions do we want the AI model to ask in response to the answer that's given here? So in this case, it's 2. And obviously we're asking it to say, do you like the car? Well, there's a picture of the car there's that visual stimulus. So you can upload photos, video, audio, PDFs, whatever visual stimulus you like. And then we'll go to question 2, and you just continue to build out like this. So question 2, I think, is when considering the purchase of an EV, what features are important? In this case, one follow-up question, and so on and so forth. So that's the build of the discussion guide. And I'm going to quickly move on to what the actual interview experience looks like, just so you can get a very quick view of the actual interview itself. So that's
5.
Okay, so she's given it a 5 out of 10. Now our model will ask its question based on that. Okay, so it's like
It's a bit boxy for my taste, and I don't really like the wheels. But to be honest, I'm not sure I'd buy an electric car at the moment. I'm a bit worried about the charging.
And now we're going to have a further follow-up question determined by the model.
I think the government actually needs to do their bit, really. They need to phase out petrol cars much quicker than they're doing and make sure there are charging stations everywhere so people can use them. Otherwise, people are just going to worry that they're going to get stranded with no charge left.
So I'll just quickly pause it there so you can see what happens is that the predetermined or those preset questions that you or the client has input, they will always be asked. And then the probing questions will always be asked. You always know that there are going to be any number of probing questions that you have determined. What you don't know is what those questions will be, because they're determined by the AI model, and they're determined taking 3 different things into account. 1, what's it responding to? What was the answer that the person gave? 2, what was the objective that you set at the start? And 3, what was the context that you added as well? So it takes all of those things into consideration. And then I'll quickly have to just blast through this pretty quickly, but then the analysis section as well. So here, within the backend, you have private workspaces and shared workspaces. So you have private spaces that where you can work on particular projects, shared that you can share with your colleagues or clients, and then different stages. So this is that particular interview, and we'll go into the results. So here you've got the overall page. You can see how many completes, the completion rate, average time to completion, a summary of the answers, the key themes that emerged, any interesting quotes that emerged as well. And then you can go into on a per question basis. So here we've got question 1. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to buy the car? We get a summary of the answers. Obviously, what we've got here is, if you remember when we programmed that question, we had that 1 to 10, but also those follow-up questions. So why did you give it a 2? Why did you give it a 5? And so on and so forth. And then we can then visualize some of that data and break that down into pie charts and bar charts. We can pull out the key themes that were occurring, any interesting quotes, and any opportunities as well. And then you can go through one by one into different answers, and you can also then see which categories they all fell into as well. So in this case, this is more around the reasons, the most important reasons. So here is around comfort, performance, battery life, but the most important reasons being around charging speed and the availability of charging stations. So that's a very, very quick overview of the analysis section. And then one other final bit that I just want to talk about was another part of this the product, which is slightly different to what I've just shown you there. So that analysis, if you think about that, almost a bit like you're sifting through the entirety of all of those questions. There's another part of our platform which allows you to do something slightly differently, and it allows you to use natural language to talk to your data set, to talk to your transcripts. So what we do is we use something called a vector database to vectorize all of the transcripts that come in, and then here you can then ask a question to your transcripts. In this case, we're going to say, what were the most common reasons that interviewees gave for not having bought an electric vehicle to date, and please provide us with quotes that validate your findings. This is, whereas the other part of the platform is like sifting through the ocean. This is a bit more like panning for gold. So what is happening now is that the model is taking 50 scoops, if you like, out of the riverbed, and it's taking them from places where it knows it is most likely to find useful information to answer this question. And so here now we've got an answer. The most common reasons being around high costs, infrastructure concerns, vehicle lifespan, and we've got some quotes as well. So really, really useful because you can then, like I say, talk to your data set. But what's most useful and interesting is this bit here, is how it's showing you its workings. These are those 50 scoops, if you like, out of the data set that it has taken to form its answer. So then you can scroll through and make sure that actually that those answers are relevant. You've got that evidence-based approach. And then when you find, you might find a particular quote or an answer that you think, oh, that's really interesting. I really want to hear more from this particular person. You simply click on that quote and it will then take you into the transcripts themselves, and you can then scroll through transcript by transcript, which I'm not sure I showed you. Oh yeah, here in this section here. So here you can see all of those interviews that have taken place in their entirety, and then you can scroll through. You can see all of the answers that have been given. You can listen to their answers as well. You can see the questions that you have set. You can see the questions that the AI has asked in response as well. And you can download that audio, and you really get a sense of what the customer is saying. And then one final bit that is really, really important for us is just around security. It's a question we get asked a lot around data security and privacy. We've built our platform on something called Azure. The reason why we built it on Azure is that it means that no data is ever used to train any models belonging to you or your clients. And also it means that all the data is stored within the EEA. So actually the servers for this, our servers are based both in the Netherlands and for Azure in Sweden. And so we really, it's slightly more laborious for us, but it's important that we know exactly where our data is flowing and that we know and can guarantee that no data is being used to train any models. So I will stop there because hopefully we can leave a couple of minutes or 5 minutes, hopefully, for some questions. And yeah, if anyone does want to connect with me or wants a more detailed demo, really, really happy to provide one. That's a QR code for my LinkedIn, or just drop me an email. And we've got a shiny new website going live on Monday. So maybe come back on Monday. Anyway, I'll stop sharing my screen and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Greg. Really appreciate that. There's been a couple of questions in the chat, which I'm not sure if you can see, but I'll read them out if it helps. So the first question up was around, can the AI be integrated into a CATI, a telephone interviewing solution? And also, how can it probe into the responses? I think just maybe elaborate a bit more, but the telephone interviewing is an interesting.
Yeah, it is. Not right now is the answer to can it be integrated into a CATI solution. So how the solution itself works. We used to plug into WhatsApp actually, because that was just quite an easy way to plug into. We didn't want to build any UI UX, but actually most of our customers wanted a more secure. Well, yeah, they didn't want any of their data flowing through a Meta product, so we built our own web-based chat client. So don't need to download anything. You consent to take part, and it will open up on a web browser either on your phone or on your desktop. In terms of how it can probe into responses, yeah. So it's really that is the AI model behind it. So it will digest what the participant or respondent has said, and then it will respond, like I said earlier on, with those three factors in mind. Okay, well, what did they say? What would be a natural follow-up question to their response, and what's the goal of the interview? What's the objective, and if there's any useful contextual information that you've inputted at the start as well.
Great. There's one more in the chat, and then I can see David's got his hand up, but I'll just do another one in the chat at the moment. So there's a question around languages. Yeah. So you're conducting work in multiple languages, but you've kind of done a translation into English for everything. And how is that transcription quality? What are you using, and how are you verifying the quality of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is your interviews will be returned in the language that they have been spoken. Actually, we're building something that can instantly translate those, so you can instantly translate. Then all of the analysis is done in the language that you request. So you can set your analysis language to whichever language you want. In terms of the quality of that transcription, the answer is it depends on the language that it is transcribing. There's a link that I can share with someone actually, which gives an indication of large language models. The quality of the translation depends upon the breadth and depth of the training material that has been trained on. English is understandably it translates those more English and those and European languages translates very, very well. We've done studies, like I said earlier on, in Kazakh and Turkish. We did notice that the translation was slightly less good with some of those languages, but was still very good, and still much better, for example, in our opinion, than Google Translate. So I think there's a question here from Barbara actually saying, what do you use for the translation? Yeah, it is our Azure OpenAI model, so not Google Translate. And yeah, we found generally the quality to be high.
Great. And then David, you've had your hand up for a long time. I don't know if you want to come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Greg. Fascinating, disconcerting, a whole bundle of things going on there. I've got one question for you. The example that you gave was really impressive, but it was largely about rational factors. It was about, what are the reasons why you don't choose an EV, this reason, that reason, that reason. Have you got any observations on how well this whole kind of system works with emotional content? So, if we change X, Y, or Z, how does that change how you feel rather than what you do?
I haven't. My honest answer is no, not yet. I haven't got any good examples for you on that. One of the interesting developments that's come along recently with the model is that ability, and one of the things that we've kind of got in our roadmap is the ability, hopefully, to better understand some of that emotional intent bits a bit behind the answer. So at the moment, what we're not doing is analyzing people's voices for emotion, for example, but it is part of what we hopefully plan to do in the future. But would be really, but it's a really interesting question. And I suppose what I would say is, if you've got let's give it a demo, and let's trial it, because I'd be really interested to see that myself.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So what have we got here? So is there a limit to the direct questions you can ask? E.g., you do ask a mix of multiple. There's no limit to the number of direct questions you can ask. No, in answer to that, Barbara. Is there a standard number of follow-up questions per original discussion guide question? How does the AI decide when to stop follow-up probes? Good question. So that is determined by you. So you can determine how many of those follow-up questions you like. So it might be actually that there is a question in there that you don't want to probe any further on. You just want the answer to. You don't need to go any further. There might be a question in there that is really at the heart of what it is that you're trying to understand. In which case you might want to probe further. We're just experimenting at the moment actually with how many probes we should allow, in effect, because we've experimented with different numbers, and so at the moment I think it's set to 2 or 3, but we're looking to experiment with, actually, is there one question that you might want to set and then just see where that question takes you. But in answer to your question, you are able to set how many of those probing follow-up questions.
Right. Unfortunately, we've run out of time now. I've got a copy of the question from Tracy, which I'll share with you, Greg, and perhaps you can reply to everyone. We can add that in because we are over time and I do need to end the session. But thank you very much, Greg. That was really thought-provoking and a really interesting product. Wish you every success with that, and thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Goodbye, everybody. See you again soon.